What I'm about to share is going to sound absolutely impossible, but I need you to hear me out. 4 nights ago, I had the most confrontational encounter with Jesus about a question that's been tearing at my heart for months. Why do some marriages that start with genuine love and faith end in devastating failure? What he revealed to me about the brutal realities behind failed relationships wasn't gentle comfort. It was raw, honest truth that shattered every romantic illusion I had about marriage and replaced it with something both terrifying and liberating. But here's what I need you to know before I tell you what Jesus said. What he's about to reveal about the real reasons marriages fail will make you question everything you believe about love, commitment, and whether your own relationship is built on solid ground or beautiful lies. And if you're married right now, what you're about to hear might save your marriage or show you why it's already in more danger than you realize. But before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps give me the strength to speak my truth. Now let's get into my story. I'm sitting here on a secluded beach just north of Malibu, where the waves have been crashing against these rocks for thousands of years. Constant, reliable, eternal. The morning fog is just starting to lift, and there's something about being surrounded by the permanence of creation while contemplating the fragility of human relationships that puts everything in perspective. The salt air and endless horizon remind you how small we are, yet how significant our choices become in the scope of eternity. To understand why Jesus' revelation about marriage failure hit me so hard, I need to be completely honest about something that's been haunting me for the past year. Despite playing Jesus on The Chosen, despite being surrounded by incredible people of faith, I've been watching marriages around me crumble in ways that have shaken my belief in the possibility of lasting love. It started 8 months ago, when my closest friend from college, a man I'd considered the most solid, faithful husband I knew, called me in tears to tell me his marriage of 15 years was over. This wasn't some Hollywood superficial relationship. This was a couple who had met in church, courted with intention, prayed together daily, raised their children in faith. They were supposed to be the example that lasting love was possible. "I don't understand what happened," he told me through his sobs. "We started with such love, such commitment to God and each other. How did we get here? How did two people who promised to love each other forever end up unable to even have a civil conversation?" His question haunted me because I didn't have an answer. This couple had done everything right, according to Christian relationship advice. They had prayed before marriage, gone through counseling, built their relationship on shared faith, yet somehow 15 years later they were signing divorce papers and fighting over custody of their children. But that was just the beginning. Over the following months, I watched marriage after marriage fall apart around me. My neighbor, married 22 years, discovered his wife had been having an emotional affair for 3 years. A couple from our church, who had led marriage enrichment seminars, announced their separation after 28 years together. Even some of the cast and crew from The Chosen were going through divorces that left everyone shocked and confused. Each failed marriage hit me like a personal blow because these weren't people who had entered marriage carelessly. These were individuals who had sought God's will, who had committed with sincere hearts, who had believed their love would last forever. If their marriages could fail so devastatingly, what hope was there for any of us? The weight of witnessing so much marital destruction began to affect my own view of love and commitment. I found myself terrified of ever getting married because I couldn't understand why some relationships that started with genuine love ended in such bitterness and pain. If devoted, praying couples could grow to hate each other, what chance did anyone have? During filming season 6 of The Chosen, we've been working on episodes that deal with relationships and commitment, and I've struggled to portray Jesus' teachings about love because I was so confused by what I was seeing in real life. How could I represent the God who designed marriage when marriage seemed to fail more often than it succeeded, even among his most devoted followers? The crisis point came last month when I received a letter from a viewer that broke my heart. A woman wrote about watching The Chosen with her husband, drawing closer to God together, feeling like their marriage was stronger than ever, only to discover 2 weeks later that he had been living a double life for years. Her faith in both God and love was shattered. "If God really designed marriage," she wrote, "why didn't he protect ours? We prayed together, we served together, we believed together. How could someone who seemed so committed to Christ and to me be deceiving me for years? What's the point of believing in God's plan for marriage if it can be destroyed so easily?" Her letter forced me to confront questions I'd been avoiding. Is marriage really God's design, or is it a human institution we've tried to bless with divine approval? If God truly joins couples together, why do so many Christian marriages end in divorce? Are we expecting too much from marriage, or are we fundamentally misunderstanding what it's supposed to be? These questions weren't just intellectual curiosities, they were personal torment. At 49 and unmarried, I've spent years wondering if I should even pursue marriage when I've seen so many fail so spectacularly. Maybe staying single is wisdom rather than loneliness. Maybe the longing for lasting love is naive rather than natural. But the question that kept me awake night after night was this: if marriages fail, even when people genuinely love God and each other, what are we missing? What do couples not understand about love, commitment, or divine design that sets them up for failure despite their best intentions? 2 weeks ago, after another day of filming scenes about Jesus' teachings on love while internally struggling with these questions, I drove out here to this very beach where I'm sitting now. There's something about the constancy of the ocean that puts human struggles in perspective. These waves have been faithful to this shore for millennia. Why can't human promises show the same reliability? I sat on these rocks until the sun set, watching couples walk hand in hand along the beach, and I found myself praying for them. Did they understand something about love that the failed marriages around me had missed? Were they destined for lasting joy or eventual heartbreak? How could anyone make promises about forever when so many forevers ended in divorce court? That night, under a sky full of stars with the eternal rhythm of waves providing the soundtrack, I prayed with more desperation than I'd ever felt about this topic. Jesus, I need to understand why marriages fail. I need to know what couples don't see that sets them up for heartbreak. Please show me the truth about love, commitment, and why even faithful people end up destroying the relationships they once treasured. I prayed until I was emotionally exhausted, confessing my fear of marriage, my confusion about love, my inability to understand how something designed by God could be so fragile in human hands. As the waves crashed rhythmically against the shore, I felt this growing sense that I was about to receive an answer that would change everything I thought I knew about relationships. The beach grew incredibly still despite the constant motion of the water. Even the normal sounds of seabirds and distant traffic seemed to fade, until there was only the eternal song of waves and this overwhelming sense of divine presence settling over the entire coastline. Then, in what felt like both an instant and eternity, I found myself transported into the most intense spiritual encounter I'd ever experienced. I was still on the beach, but it was somehow elevated into a realm where eternal truths could be communicated directly to the human heart. Jesus appeared beside me on the sand, but his expression was unlike anything I'd seen in previous encounters. This wasn't the gentle, comforting Jesus I was used to. His face showed a complex mixture of deep love for humanity and unflinching honesty about human nature that made me both eager and terrified to hear what he had to say. "Jonathan," he said, and his voice carried both infinite compassion and divine authority that demanded complete attention. "You've been watching marriages fail and wondering if I designed them poorly or if humans are failing to understand my design. The truth is more complex and more hopeful than either of those options." As he spoke, I could feel decades of confusion about love and commitment beginning to focus into this moment of potential understanding. But I also sensed that whatever Jesus was about to tell me would be harder to hear than I expected. "The reason marriages fail," Jesus continued, his voice taking on a tone of absolute honesty, "isn't because love isn't real or because my design is flawed. Marriages fail because most people enter them with fundamental misunderstandings about what marriage actually is and what it requires to succeed." He gestured toward the endless ocean before us. "These waves have crashed against this shore for thousands of years, not because it's easy, but because it's their nature. Marriage was designed to last forever, not because it would be effortless, but because it would transform both people into who they were meant to become through the process of choosing love when it's difficult." The weight of what he was saying began to settle over me. This wasn't going to be a gentle explanation about love being beautiful but misunderstood. This was going to be a confrontation with hard truths about human nature, selfish desires, and the gap between what we want marriage to be and what we're willing to do to make it succeed. "Are you ready to hear the brutal truth about why marriages fail?" Jesus asked, his eyes holding mine with intensity that made it impossible to look away. "Because what I'm about to show you will destroy every romantic fantasy you've ever held about love. But it will also show you how to build relationships that can actually survive the realities of human nature." But here's what Jesus told me would shock me most about marriage failure. The number one reason has nothing to do with incompatibility, falling out of love, or even infidelity. The real killer of marriage is something that almost every couple does without realizing they're destroying their relationship from the very beginning. I nodded, feeling both terrified and hopeful about what I was about to learn. I knew I was on the verge of receiving revelation that would either devastate my remaining hope for love or provide the roadmap to relationships that could actually survive the test of time and human weakness. As Jesus and I stood on that spiritual beach where eternal truths could be spoken without the filters of human comfort, the atmosphere around us intensified with the weight of what was about to be revealed. The waves continued their eternal rhythm, but now I could sense that each crash against the shore was echoing the harsh realities he was preparing to share about human relationships. "Jonathan," Jesus said, his voice carrying both infinite love and unflinching honesty, "the first brutal truth about marriage failure is this. Most people don't enter marriage to serve their spouse. They enter it to be served. They're looking for someone to meet their needs, fulfill their dreams, complete their happiness, rather than someone to love sacrificially for a lifetime." The words hit me like a physical blow because I could immediately see the truth in every failed marriage I'd witnessed. As he spoke, I began to see the spiritual reality behind the relationship disasters I'd been observing. "Watch this," Jesus said, and suddenly I could perceive the hidden motivations behind couples' wedding vows. Instead of two people promising to serve each other, I saw two people essentially signing contracts for what they expected to receive: emotional security, physical attraction, financial stability, social status, personal fulfillment. Every marriage that begins with "what will this person do for me?" is already doomed. Jesus continued, his tone becoming more intense. Because when the other person inevitably fails to meet those expectations, and they will fail, because no human can be another person's source of complete happiness, disappointment turns to resentment, resentment turns to contempt, and contempt kills love. I watched in horror as he showed me the internal progression of couples who had started with genuine affection but had built their relationship on mutual need rather than mutual service. The moment one person felt their needs weren't being met, the entire foundation cracked. But here's what Jesus revealed would shock me even more. The second reason marriages fail is that people confuse emotional intensity with love. They mistake the chemical rush of attraction, the excitement of pursuit, the dopamine high of new relationship energy for the actual commitment that sustains marriage through decades of ordinary life. He showed me couples in the early stages of relationships, completely intoxicated by feelings they mistook for love. "This isn't love," Jesus explained as I watched people making life-altering commitments based on temporary emotions. "This is infatuation, attraction, chemical bonding, all good things, but not the foundation for lifelong commitment. Real love," he continued, "is a choice you make when you don't feel like it. It's serving someone when they're not serving you back. It's choosing their good even when it costs you something. Most people divorce the moment they stop feeling in love because they never learned what love actually is." The third truth was even more devastating. Modern marriage fails because people expect their spouse to be their everything: best friend, lover, emotional support, entertainment, spiritual guide, business partner, co-parent, and source of personal fulfillment. No human being can carry that weight without breaking under the pressure. I saw marriages collapsing under unrealistic expectations, spouses feeling suffocated by partners who demanded they fulfill every relational need, individuals losing themselves in trying to be everything to another person. "Marriage was designed to be one important relationship among many," Jesus explained. "When you expect your spouse to meet every need, you create a pressure that destroys the very connection you're trying to preserve. People need friends, community, individual interests, separate relationships with me, not just their spouse." But here's the truth Jesus said would be hardest for people to accept. The fourth reason marriages fail is that most people are not emotionally or spiritually mature enough to love another person well when they get married. They're still wounded, selfish, immature versions of themselves trying to use marriage to fix problems that only I can heal. I watched as he revealed the internal brokenness that most people bring to marriage: unhealed childhood wounds, insecurities, selfishness, pride, fear of abandonment, need for control. Instead of addressing these issues before marriage, people expected their spouse to heal or accommodate their dysfunction. "You cannot give what you do not have," Jesus said with heartbreaking clarity. "If you don't know how to love yourself in healthy ways, if you haven't learned to find your identity and worth in me, if you're still carrying deep wounds from your past, you will damage your marriage no matter how much you care about your spouse." The fifth reason marriages fail was perhaps the most shocking. People divorce because they prioritize their own happiness over their commitment to love. The moment marriage becomes difficult, uncomfortable, or requires sacrifice, they choose their immediate comfort over their covenant promise. I saw couples abandoning marriages not because of abuse or betrayal, but simply because they were no longer happy, fulfilled, or excited. "Happiness is not the purpose of marriage," Jesus said firmly. Growth is the purpose. Becoming the person I created you to be through the crucible of committed love. That's the purpose. But we live in a culture that worships happiness and personal fulfillment above all else, he continued. So, when marriage requires sacrifice, compromise, forgiveness, or putting someone else's needs first, people think something is wrong rather than understanding that something is working exactly as designed. The sixth truth cut deeper than all the others. Most marriages fail because people don't understand that successful marriage requires the death of your single self. You cannot remain the same person you were before marriage and expect the relationship to thrive. Marriage demands transformation, and most people resist change even when it would save their relationship. I watched couples fighting to maintain their individual preferences, habits, dreams, and independence while wondering why their marriage felt like a constant battle. Two people cannot become one flesh while insisting on remaining two separate people. Jesus explained, unity requires surrender, and surrender terrifies people who have been taught that their individual happiness is the highest good. But here's what Jesus revealed as the most tragic reason marriages fail, and this one made me weep. The seventh truth is that many couples give up on their marriage just before the breakthrough. They divorce during the difficult seasons when their relationship could have transformed into something extraordinary if they had persevered through the pain. He showed me couples who had been on the verge of deep intimacy, breakthrough communication, and profound connection, but chose to divorce instead of doing the hard work required to reach that promised land of mature love. Every marriage goes through seasons of death and resurrection, Jesus explained, his voice heavy with grief for all the relationships that could have been saved. The couples who make it are not those who never struggle. They're those who choose to die to themselves and be reborn as better partners during the struggles. As these brutal truths settled into my heart, I felt both devastated and strangely hopeful. The devastation came from recognizing these patterns in every failed marriage I'd witnessed. But the hope came from understanding that marriage failure wasn't mysterious or inevitable, then it had identifiable causes that could be addressed. But Jesus, I said, my voice shaking with emotion, if these are the reasons marriages fail, is there any hope? Can people learn to love well enough to make marriage work? His expression softened slightly, and for the first time in our conversation, I saw a hint of the gentle compassion I was more familiar with. That, Jonathan, is exactly the right question. Because understanding why marriages fail is only valuable if you also understand how they can succeed. I could sense that we were approaching the most crucial part of this revelation, Wine. Not just the problems, but the solutions. Not just why love fails, but how it can thrive despite the brutal realities of human nature. What I'm about to show you, Jesus said, taking my hands as the spiritual beach around us began to shift towards something more hopeful, will give you a roadmap for relationships that can not only survive these challenges, but be transformed by them into something more beautiful than the fairy tale love most people are chasing. But first, he had one more shocking revelation that would change everything I thought I knew about the purpose of marriage itself. As Jesus and I stood on that spiritual beach where hard truths had been laid bare like stones polished by endless waves, the atmosphere began to shift from confrontation to revelation. The brutal honesty about marriage failure had cleared the air, and now I could sense that something more hopeful, though perhaps equally challenging, was about to be revealed. Now, Jesus said, his voice taking on a tone of profound purpose, I need to tell you the shocking truth about what marriage is actually designed to accomplish. Because until you understand the real purpose, you'll keep trying to make it serve goals it was never meant to fulfill. The spiritual beach around us transformed, and suddenly I could see couples throughout history, not just in their wedding moments of joy and promise, but in their daily struggles, their moments of choosing love over selfishness, their gradual transformation through the crucible of committed relationship. Marriage, Jesus said with startling intensity, is not primarily about your happiness, your fulfillment, or even your companionship. Marriage is my workshop for making you into the person you were created to be. It's designed to surface everything broken, selfish, and immature in your character so it can be healed and transformed. The revelation hit me like lightning. I had been viewing marriage as a destination when Jesus was describing it as a process, not a reward for being good, but a refinery for becoming better. Every couple that enters marriage thinking it will make them happy is entering for the wrong reason. He continued, happy people might make a good marriage, but marriage doesn't make people happy. Marriage makes people holy if they let it. He gestured to the endless ocean before us. These waves don't crash against the rocks to destroy them, but to shape them. Marriage brings two people together not to affirm who they already are, but to challenge them to become who they need to be. I watched as he showed me couples who understood this purpose. Instead of expecting their spouse to accommodate their weaknesses, they allowed their spouse's presence to reveal areas needing growth. Instead of fighting against the discomfort of change, they embraced it as evidence that the process was working. The first key to marriage success. Jesus said, beginning what I sensed would be practical guidance for actually making relationships work is entering with the right purpose, transformation, not gratification. When couples understand that difficulty isn't a sign something is wrong but proof that something is working, they stop running from problems and start working through them. The second key revolutionized my understanding of commitment. Success requires choosing love as an action, not depending on it as a feeling. Love is something you do consistently, especially when you don't feel like it. The couples who make it are those who keep choosing loving actions even when loving feelings are absent. I watched couples who had learned to serve each other during seasons when they felt more annoyance than affection, who chose kindness when they felt anger, who acted with generosity when they felt like withholding. Their feelings eventually followed their actions, but their actions never waited for their feelings. The third key is understanding that your spouse is not your enemy, they are your partner in growth. When they point out your flaws, challenge your selfishness, or fail to meet your expectations, they're not attacking you, they're providing opportunities for you to become more mature. This reframed every marital conflict I'd ever witnessed. Instead of two people fighting against each other, I began to see two people fighting together against their own immaturity, selfishness, and brokenness. The fourth key, Jesus continued, is learning to meet your own needs appropriately so you can love your spouse freely rather than needily. You get your identity from me, your emotional security from relationship with me, your sense of purpose from serving my kingdom. Then marriage becomes a place to give love, not desperately seek it. I saw couples who had learned to fill their emotional tanks through spiritual practices, friendships, personal growth, and service to others. They came to their marriage as whole people offering their fullness rather than broken people demanding completion. The fifth key is accepting that marriage will require the death of your single self, your unlimited freedom, your total independence, your right to always have things your way. But what dies is only what was keeping you from experiencing real intimacy. The couples who thrived had learned to see this death not as loss but as liberation, freedom from the prison of selfishness into the joy of genuine connection. The sixth key is understanding that forgiveness isn't just for big betrayals, it's the daily maintenance of love. Every day, you must forgive small disappointments, minor irritations, unmet expectations. Resentment is love's cancer, and forgiveness is its cure. I watched couples who had mastered the art of letting go of daily hurts before they accumulated into major damage. They understood that holding on to offenses was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But here's the seventh and most crucial key, Jesus said, his voice rising with passion. And this is what separates marriages that merely survive from marriages that truly thrive. Both people must be committed not just to the relationship, but to their own spiritual and emotional growth. He showed me couples where both people were actively working on becoming better versions of themselves through therapy, spiritual disciplines, personal development, learning better communication skills. Their marriage was strong because both individuals were growing stronger. When both people are committed to growth, marriage becomes a dance of two people helping each other become their best selves. When only one person is growing, marriage becomes a burden. When neither person is growing, marriage becomes a prison. As these keys to marital success settled into my understanding, I felt both hope and intimidation. Hope because I could see that lasting love was possible, but intimidation because it required far more intentionality and maturity than most people brought to marriage. But Jesus, I said, what about couples who are already struggling? What about marriages that are already failing? Is it too late for them? His expression filled with compassion and determination. It's never too late if both people are willing to start over with the right understanding. Some of the strongest marriages I've seen are ones that nearly failed but were rebuilt on the foundation of transformation rather than gratification. He showed me couples who had separated, divorced, or been on the verge of ending their marriages, but had learned these principles and rebuilt their relationships from the ground up. Their second attempt at marriage, sometimes with the same person, sometimes with someone new, was radically different because they were radically different. The beautiful truth, Jesus continued, is that every marriage failure can become education for marriage success if people are willing to learn from their mistakes rather than just repeat them with someone new. But then he shared something that made my heart race. And for those who are single like you, Jonathan, understanding these truths makes you not afraid of marriage but prepared for it. When you know what marriage actually requires, you can spend your single years developing the character and skills necessary to succeed. I felt a complete shift in my perspective on my own unmarried status. Instead of feeling like I was missing out on some beautiful fairy tale, I could see my singleness as preparation time, an opportunity to become the kind of person who could build a lasting marriage rather than just hoping to find one. What should I be doing to prepare? I asked, suddenly eager to use this revelation constructively. Learn to love yourself well, not selfishly, but with healthy self-care and self-respect. Heal your wounds so you don't bring them to someone else to fix. Develop strong friendships so you're not looking for a spouse to be your everything. Find your identity and purpose in me so you're complete when you meet someone rather than seeking completion. As our encounter began to wind down, Jesus placed his hands on my shoulders one final time. The reason I showed you why marriages fail isn't to discourage you from love, but to prepare you for real love. When you understand what marriage actually requires: transformation, sacrifice, growth, forgiveness, commitment, you can enter it with realistic expectations and the skills necessary to succeed. The weight of responsibility felt enormous, but so did the possibility of experiencing love that was built on truth rather than fantasy. When I opened my eyes, I was back on the physical beach where I'd begun this encounter, but everything had changed. The waves still crashed against the rocks with eternal faithfulness, but now I understood they represented not just permanence, but the patient work of transformation, constant, sometimes rough, but ultimately creating something beautiful. Over the past 4 days since this encounter, I've been processing these revelations about marriage and sharing them with friends who are struggling in their relationships. The impact has been profound and immediate. Just yesterday, I had coffee with a couple who were seriously considering divorce after 12 years of marriage. Instead of offering platitudes about working it out, I could share what Jesus had shown me about the real purpose of marriage. When they realized their problems weren't evidence of failure but opportunities for growth, something shifted in their entire perspective. "We've been fighting against each other instead of fighting for each other," the wife said with tears in her eyes. "We thought marriage was supposed to make us happy, and when it got hard, we assumed we were doing it wrong." This morning, I talked with a single friend who was despairing about ever finding love. When I shared Jesus' revelation about using singleness as preparation time rather than waiting time, she became excited about personal development instead of anxious about missing out. But perhaps most powerfully, this understanding has transformed my own relationship with the possibility of marriage. I'm no longer afraid of commitment because I understand what it requires. I'm no longer looking for someone to complete me because I'm working on becoming complete myself. I'm no longer hoping for fairy tale love because I'm preparing for real love. The truth about why marriages fail is brutal, but it's also liberating. When you understand the real challenges, you can prepare for them. When you know the actual purpose, you can align with it. When you recognize what real love requires, you can develop the capacity to give it. Let me pray for everyone who needs this wake-up call about marriage and relationships. Father, thank you for revealing the truth about marriage that can save relationships and prepare hearts for lasting love. For every couple watching who is struggling, help them see their difficulties not as evidence of failure, but as opportunities for transformation. For those who have been expecting their spouse to make them happy, show them that their happiness is their own responsibility and their marriage's purpose is their mutual growth. For those who have been running from the challenges of commitment, give them courage to embrace the process of becoming better people through love. For single people who have been afraid of marriage or desperate for it, help them see this season as preparation time. Show them what they need to develop in themselves to be ready for the real work of lasting love. Lord, heal the wounds that people carry into relationships. Break the patterns of selfishness that destroy marriages. Replace fantasy expectations with realistic understanding of what love actually requires. For couples on the verge of giving up, show them that their breakthrough might be just on the other side of their current struggle. Help them choose transformation over separation, growth over comfort, commitment over convenience. Transform our understanding of marriage from a destination to a journey, from a source of happiness to a process of holiness, from a fairy tale to a workshop where two people help each other become who you created them to be. In Jesus' name, amen. If this message has challenged your understanding of marriage and relationships, please subscribe and share your story in the comments. Are you married and recognizing these patterns? Single and realizing you need to prepare differently? How will this truth change your approach to love and commitment? Remember, marriage doesn't fail because love isn't real. It fails because people don't understand what real love requires. When you're prepared for the actual work of transformation rather than hoping for effortless happiness, you can build relationships that don't just survive the challenges of human nature, but are strengthened by them. The love you're longing for is possible, but it's not the fairy tale version. It's the kind of love that makes both people better.
Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. It means the world to us that you chose to spend these moments with us. We pray that this message has not only touched your heart, but has also planted a seed of faith that will grow and flourish in your life. The Great Commission calls each one of us to go and share the good news, and by simply watching and sharing this video, you are already part of that mission. If this content has blessed you in any way, please share it with your family, your friends, and everyone around you, because there is always someone out there who is searching for hope and needs to hear this message. Thank you for being a light in this world. May God's grace, peace, and love surround you and your loved ones every single day. God bless you richly.
That creates something beautiful from the raw materials of human brokenness, that proves commitment can be stronger than feelings and transformation more valuable than comfort.